Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Hopecast. I'm so glad that you're here with me for another episode. On this week, I'm sharing with you a recording of a sermon that I gave for a group for young moms. And we were talking this week about strength and courage. And one of the things that I wanted to share with them was that one of the most powerful ways to show strength was through consistency of continuing to put one foot in front of the other. And I know that this is a message for a season and a people in our culture, and that so many of us can relate to this and just being in the meanwhile, and how hard that is to not have the answers that you are longing for and not being able to work your way out of certain circumstances and situations. So I really hope that this message today on the Hopecast is encouraging to you if you too are in the meanwhile. Friends, if you could help me, would you join me at buymeacoffee.com? A gift as small as $5 would be awesome in continuing to help with the production costs of the Hopecast. We are meeting audience members around the world in all of the continents except Antarctica, and I'm really proud about that. And so you are helping to further encourage people who are grieving and need to experience the love of Jesus all over the world when you support production of the Hopecast. Friends, thank you for joining me today, and here is my sermon. So I was afraid of becoming a mom. I grew up in a home with a lot of trauma. My dad was mentally ill, schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline, ADD, addiction. It was a very crazy making, traumatic way to grow up. And I didn't have a model of parenting. I became the parentified adult very young, taking care of my mom and then helping take care of my siblings when they were born. And I was a caretaker from the time I was a little girl. And so when I got out of the house, I was like, bye. I don't want to do this anymore. And I met Micah in 2007, and we were dinks for a couple of years. And then the Holy Spirit was like, it's time to get pregnant. And I was like, I don't want to. I like being able to sleep in on Saturdays. I like not needing a babysitter. I'm enjoying this season of my life where my husband and I have each other's mostly undivided attention. But at an earlier season in my life, I had consecrated myself to the Lord, and I said, God, you sit on the throne of my heart. And even if I don't understand or don't agree with you, or I'm scared of what you're asking me to do, I say, yes, Lord, I obey. And so we pulled the goalie, and 3 months later, spontaneously conceived twins. And I was mad. I was mad at God. I was like, God, I was barely on task with like one kid. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to imagine a life where I would still get out of the house. And I literally cried on the way home from the ultrasound where I saw those two little gummy bears jumping around in there, because I was like, I'm never going to leave the house again. And that place of being in the unknown, in the meanwhile, in the place that you don't see an end to your situation and you don't really feel like you have the resources that you need or the answers that you're looking for is, I think, a place that is so deeply human. And it's one that we can all relate to in a variety of seasons. And I think at some point, in some area of our lives, we are always in that place of the meanwhile and in the waiting. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you today about the concept of strength and courage when there is no end in sight. I think that one of the most courageous things that you can do is continue to get out of bed when there is no end in sight to our circumstances. It's not flashy, it's not pretty, it doesn't go on your Instagram reel, but it is powerful. And, I just felt like we went from one season to the next and not knowing what was coming. And the Lord is raising me and growing me up while I'm raising my babies, right? And each thing along the way is this unknown. And I don't know about you guys, but when they didn't sleep, when I brought them home, like I knew logically that newborns don't sleep, but there was this place in me that legitimately feared that they would never sleep. Like that I was going to send them to college, like waking up 3 to 4 times a night. I was just like, will I ever sleep again? And then my twins, they had a poop fetish. They had the lovely toddler affinity of playing in their diapers. And I think they really enjoyed it, to be honest, because it would be like nap time and they are silent. I mean, everything is good. I didn't have a camera yet. I really should have splurged. Like we didn't have a lot of money. And it was kind of more of a luxury. It was a little bit more of a luxury 14 years ago when they were born. And so I wasn't watching them like I would have been today, but listening for them. And, it's just me in the house while they're napping. And I would go upstairs and they had painted their room in poop. And my daughter, when she was little, she sucked these 2 fingers, it was just her little baby tail. And she had poop all over her face and all over her hands, but not her 2 little fingers. And I did everything I knew to do as a parent in discipline and trying to get there earlier and changing their schedule and making sure that their diapers were clean when they would. Every practical thing I could do to intervene. And I remember one day I'd stayed up late cleaning, and I know that that's something that feels like it never has an end, right? And so I'd sacrifice my sleep and my energy to really clean the house. And I woke up that morning and they had covered the room in poop, carpet, walls, cribs. And you guys, poop is sticky. I don't know if you're like super familiar with like the consistency of poop, but it dries like it's legit, and we had a steam vac during that season. And that morning I walk in and I see the poop and I scream. I just scream, like not at them. Y'all, I actually ripped like a little muscle in my neck. And I remember I was here and Christine King was like, because I was walking like this, I got to put the chair away. I was like walking down the stairs like this. And she's like, why are you walking like that? And I was like, well, I threw out my neck screaming this morning because of my children. And so I just really wondered, like, is this ever going to end? Is this what parenting is? Like, am I doing the right things? Are the things that I'm investing meaningful? Like, I am a very intentional parent, and I parent with the end in mind. That's just my personality. When I grew up, I also learned recently that I was raised in a cult. I don't know if you've watched Shiny Happy People, but IBLP, that was my jam. That was how I was raised. And Santa and Satan were equivalent when I grew up. And my mom literally, like, my dad would do this mug exchange at work, and sometimes he would get like a Santa mug, and she would like put it outside of the house to wait for the trash day. Like, we couldn't even have it in the trash. That's how bad Santa was growing up. And so I do not find him equivalent with the devil. But I was like, well, I wasn't really raised with that tradition. And, I want to focus more on the lordship of Jesus and have that. And you guys, like, I work really hard to pull off Christmas for my kids. Like, it's not unusual that on Christmas Eve, I'll stay up till 3 a.m. finishing the breakfast for the morning and wrapping those presents and making everything beautiful and magical so that when they wake up and walk down those stairs, they have those core magical childhood memories. And I am like not giving the credit to some magical burglar. You know what I mean? Like, some stranger snuck in our house last night and filled up the room with all these presents and all this decor. Like, I worked really hard for that. You say, thank you, Mom, So, we talked about the history of Santa, and we talked about how, he was a wonderful man. He was generous. He really lived. He gave gifts to children. He lived in Europe, but he died. He passed away a long time ago. And as far as we know, he loved Jesus, and we'll meet him someday in heaven because, that was his heart. And so I'm investing all of this very intentional time. And other kids have Santa coming. And my kids are like, why is Santa coming to their house and not to our house? We want him to come to our house. And Micah takes them to Starbucks for a hot chocolate. And they're just having a little daddy date. And it's Christmas season. And this lady, sees the cute little twins and comes up and says, what's Santa going to bring you for Christmas? And they look her deadpan in the eye and they go, Santa is dead. She was shocked. Micah said she just backed away. She couldn't recover, and I don't blame her. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have been so purposeful with my teaching and my time with my children, and Santa is dead. That's all we got out of that story. That's why he's not coming to your house. Oh, it was bad. So I think the thing about that meanwhile and about those questions that we have, it's very othering. It's very lonely. You feel like when you are in that season that you are the only person waiting for that diagnosis, that treatment, that wisdom for discipline, that, your child with special needs, how are you going to, meet the next challenge that comes along? And I want to say to you that is a scheme of the enemy to keep you bound and silent, and that feeling like you are in the meanwhile and that you don't have the answers that you are seeking from the Lord is a very human experience. So I'm going to give you some signs. You don't have to take notes, your mamas, but if you want to, I'm going to give you some signs of knowing, of being able to navigate when you are in a meanwhile season. Because when Micah died, it was just so disorienting. I felt like I'd lost my compass. I felt like I was in a free fall. I had no idea where I was. I felt like I was lost at sea, like I'd been dropped off without my legs in China, couldn't speak the language, didn't know how to ask for help. I mean, I just had no idea how to navigate my life, and it scared me because I had lost what I thought was my purpose and my future and those dreams, and kind of like what I was working towards. And now I'm a single mom, and I just experienced a ton of pain. And I remember calling different widows and being like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 years out, and I still feel like I do not know what God is doing with my life. And that fear and that feeling of otherness and loneliness was a huge part of the grief of feeling like nobody could really relate to me, when the reality is that pain is actually a connecting experience. And when you share your pain with somebody else, you give them permission to be vulnerable in return, and you create this reciprocity and connection and relationship. Like, you can build a relationship on that. They talk about as a trauma bond, right? Like, we can take that too far and be unhealthy with it, but when we share in a healthy way, it can actually build our trust in one another. So one of the signs of being in the meanwhile season is a lack of deadlines or moving timelines, right? So when you're in school, you know that you're headed towards a semester, you know that you have quarters, you know you have Christmas break, you know you have seasonal testing, right? Like, you have these markers that tell you you're advancing something. Even in pregnancy, we have our trimesters, and we're hopefully going to 40 weeks and those kind of things. We don't know when our baby is going to start sleeping through the night. We don't know when this difficulty that we're having with our homeschooled child and their unique personality and their needs, are we going to find a resource for that? Are we showing up for them in a way that's successful for them? There are these very difficult, intangible deadlines around being in the meanwhile, and just the calendar kind of goes away. There is a sense of agitation and restlessness when you are in a meanwhile season. It feels like you're on a treadmill. It feels like no matter what you do, I'm a type A, I'm an achiever, I'm a problem solver, I'm a fixer, and I like to research things, right? And when I research things, it gives me a sense of control that I have some idea of what's going on with me. And when I'm in a meanwhile season, it's very clear to me that no amount of research, no amount of fixing, no amount of resourcing is going to bring me what I need. Like, I literally cannot manifest or make happen in my life the thing that I feel like will give me peace. Last year, I had a complete colon obstruction, and I went in to the ER after 7 days without a bowel movement, and I looked like I was pregnant. All 3 lobes of my colon were 9 centimeters across, so like 3 baby heads, right, in my belly. That's how full my intestines were. And the doctor was like, here's your 3 options, but if you don't take the option that I'm going to give you, you're going to die. And I was like, well, I got to get home to my kids, so I'm going to take your option. And I look back and I'm so grateful for the peace of the Lord Jesus. Like, I did not make that decision in anxiety. I did not feel panic or terror. I was going under the most significant surgery of my life. I was in there for 7 or 8 hours. I came out with a colostomy. If you're not familiar with what a colostomy is, they reroute your intestines to the outside, and you have a bag that catches your waste. And it is a complete change of lifestyle. It affects everything that you do. You need home health to come in and educate you how your body operates differently. I can now look back on the season and tell you that I know how it ended. But while I was in the midst of it, they told me that I had cancer. They told me that they didn't know if they could ever take it down. It could be permanent. I had an infection and sepsis. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit more about that going forward. But the unknown was killing me. The inability to do anything to solve that problem on my own behalf, it brought me to my knees. Lack of concrete models. So that means you really haven't seen somebody go through it like you're going through it. That might mean that you're doing something very similar to somebody else, like homeschooling, but your child has special needs or a very unique personality, or is autistic, or, right? Like, you haven't seen somebody homeschool like you're homeschooling, right? Or in my loss with my husband, line of duty death is unique. It is a very unusual way to die, even in the law enforcement community. And when I meet another line of duty widow, it's like, oh my gosh, like, you get this. Like, you went through the parade and the pomp and circumstance and the state funeral and the publicity and becoming famous for the worst reason ever. And so not really being able to see other widows who had gone through it like I had gone through it was really disorienting. So I want to read you the story of Sarah. I brought my real Bible today, guys. I feel like you should be proud of me, because I really honestly can't remember the last time I carried my paper Bible somewhere, but I am a geriatric millennial, and I really like paper products. I have a paper calendar. I wrote my notes with my hands and a pen. And, I don't remember things the same way if I put them into a digital calendar. So I'm kind of like soaking up the paper situation here. The Lord appeared, this is Genesis 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so that you can be refreshed, and then go your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs," which is apparently 36 pounds, of fine flour and knead it and bake some bread. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. And he then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. It's giving a little Nara Smith. Like Lucky was craving some cereal, and so I sent the children outside for 2 hours, and I made it myself. Does anybody else follow Nara Smith? She is this homemaker influencer, and yeah, she can make anything from home. You'll love her. You'll love to hate her. She's just ridiculous, but she's fabulous all at the same time. She made her husband soda at home the other day because he was craving a Coke. She made him bubble gum. Anyway, it's giving Nara Smith, we're slaughtering the cow and we're making 36 pounds of bread. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent." She's there this whole time, right? They've got divine guests. She just baked 36 pounds of bread. But she's not in the circle. I'm going to assume that this is like a cultural thing where the women were not necessarily invited to be with the menfolk in these kind of situations. But in a lot of ways, you can see that the Lord had come for Sarah. "Where is Sarah?" "There in the tent," he said. Then the Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years. Y'all, she was past menopause. Okay? She had not seen her period in many moons. Dry. You know what I'm saying? So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my master is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord?' I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I didn't laugh." And he said, "Yes, you did laugh." I love those little snarky moments. You can see the Lord getting salty with us. Sarah didn't have the scriptures. Sarah was not raised in the faith. Her husband was the father of our faith. And she was prophesied to be the mother of the faith. When I looked up her name, he changed her name from Sarai to Sarah. And it's a very minor change, and people disagree about it a little bit, but it kind of goes from a tense of my princess, my darling, to princess, queen, mother of nations, like a position. And so he is prophesying over her who she will become. But she can't see that. She's never seen it before. She hasn't experienced it. The Lord is validating her in a way that's completely foreign in Middle Eastern culture where women are property. And, I was just really thinking through this, and I had some compassion for her that I've never had before in hearing this story many times. Because how desperate do you have to be as a woman to want to see the will of God fulfilled in your life, that you go and find another woman to put in your husband's bed? How must her heart have ached? And I think that she was trying to do the right thing, because by this time, when the angels and the Lord come, it had been 23 years since the original prophecy that they would have a son and be mother of nations. Sarah didn't have Isaac until she was 90. You know what I'm saying? I'd be thinking, okay, I'm already at the, end of my childbearing years. Although Sarah did seem to be absolutely fabulous, if Abraham, meanwhile, is trying to give her off as a concubine to this king. You've got a gorgeous 85-year-old woman when he wants her in his harem. But still, you're thinking, God, I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for this promise. It's been a really long time. I'm not even ovulating. I'm not even, well, whatever. I don't know what they said. It's not my moon or something. And she hasn't had a period, and she's thinking, well, how are we going to have this prophecy and be, the father of nations? And she sacrifices the intimacy of her marriage relationship to put another woman in her husband's life in the most intimate way, in a culture that the value of a woman, period, full stop, was childbearing. You were property. What you brought to the table was your ability to reproduce. Infertility was the greatest mark against you that you can possibly imagine. Like, I'm not going to lie, I would have laughed. It's been 23 years, and you're going to come to me now after you had all of this time. He's old, I'm old. Some things the Lord says to us are too big for us to conceive of, and we laugh, we scoff. Like, that is just not possible. Like, don't you know who I am? We ask God a lot that. Do you know who I am? And he says, do you know who I am? And that is the question. As we are in the meanwhile season, is do we know who God is? Our limitations are very, very clear to us. And God is not working in that box. He has all power over matter, all power over time, all power over space. Your circumstances do not limit him in any way. Meanwhile seasons require daily bread provision, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. You know that you are in a daily bread. I'm in a daily bread season when every morning I have to wake up and pull on the Holy Spirit. Like, Lord, please get me through. When I was in the hospital, I had complications from that original surgery that I told you about, and I got hit like a truck with what they found was like 6 lemon-sized cysts that were abscesses in my gut. And so I go in and they put me on a broad-spectrum antibiotic for sepsis, and I happen to be allergic to this medication. I've never had it before, but I am, and I begin to spiral into what I can only describe as madness. I'm no longer perceiving people in the way that they actually look. Like, I saw some people during that time, and then I saw them after that time, and I literally thought one of my doctors was like 5'7", 50 pounds overweight, curly hair, and Hispanic. He was 5'4", completely fit, straight hair, and Asian. Like, this was how out of my mind I was because this antibiotic was killing me. And they think that all of my symptoms that I'm experiencing are sepsis. And so they put bag after bag after bag after bag after bag. And I'm just sitting there, like, in a chair. I'm so, like, encapsulated inside of my soul. Like, I can't communicate. I'm like trapped inside. And I was just like, God, get me through this hour. Like, I just remember staring out the window, not having any idea what was going on. I was already a unicorn case because I didn't have cancer. It was endometriosis, which is a 1 in a million occurrence. My doctors all said, Rachel, you're the only case. I'll see this in my lifetime. So I was like this circus person in the hospital where the doctors were like, ooh, that's interesting, like watching the monkeys at the zoo. And my surgeon had sat down with me and she said, Rachel, I took your case to the surgeon's lounge and I showed all of them what's going on with you, and none of us know what's going on, and you're not responding, and I'm scared for you. And that's really scary, to have the people who you hope have answers for you tell you that they all looked and they don't know what to do. And in that place, the daily bread, like the momentary bread, the hourly bread, like, Lord, get me through to my next pain medication, get me through to my next blood pressure check, get me through to the next time I throw up, I can stop throwing up over and over and over again. And that's a really severe example of daily bread, but it's not off course. Like, when you're desperate, Daily bread is real. Lord, get me through to the next nap. Lord, get me through to bedtime. Lord, get me through to the next feeding. Father, help me. I am exhausted. I am desperate. I have nothing of my own. That is a daily bread season.
Friends, I'm going to push pause here and cut us off for part 1 of this episode. I hope that this message is ministering to you and that you'll join me again for part 2 of this episode about strength and courage, being consistent and holding on to hope in the meanwhile. Friends, if the message of the Hopecast supports you, encourages you, would you share it with other people who'd also be blessed by the message of resilience and inspiration to continue in the hardest days of grief? And you can find me at rachelflick.com and on almost any social media platform. And if you would rate and review, this helps us spread the message of hope and encouragement to the people around the world. Thank you, friends.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.